Hello viewers, you're watching Afghanistan Report and I'm your host Swati Kundra. The main stories are 12 Nepalese security guards, 2 Indians among those killed in Kabul attack. UN refugee chief urges Pakistanis not to label Afghan refugees terrorists. Displaced Afghans concerned over security issues in makeshift camp. A suicide attacker targeted a minibus in the Afghan capital, killing over a dozen people, including 12 Nepalese security contractors and wounding many others. Meanwhile, in Nepal, grieving families received bodies of those killed in the attack. A report.
On June 20, a suicide bomber targeted a minibus in Afghanistan capital, killing at least 14 people, including 12 Nepalese security guards and 2 Indians, and wounded 8 others in an attack on a minibus carrying Nepalese security contractors in Kabul. Kabul police chief said the suicide bomber had waited near the compound housing the security contractors and struck as the vehicle moved through early morning traffic. Several persons at an adjacent market were also wounded in the attack.
مردمایی هستند که هم زخمی دارن و هم از بین رفته که ارقام دقیقش بعداً براتون میگم، ولی جمله در این موتر تعداد 16 الی 14 نفر بودن که اکثریتش زخمی است.
Meanwhile, in Kathmandu, grieving relatives received the bodies of the 12 Nepali nationals killed in the attack. The victims were security guards working at the Canadian embassy in Kabul. Sanjita Thapa, wife of deceased Jitendra Singh Thapa, who came to the airport with her 4-month-old son, narrated the last conversations she had with him.
भोलिपल्ट बिहान ड्युटी छ, बिहान फोन गर्छु तिमीलाई भन्नुभयो, बिहान फोन आएन, फोन म त बिजी भएर ड्युटीमा बिजी भएर फोन नगर्नु भएको होला भन्यो, तर 2 बजे 3 बजेतिर साथीले फोन गरेर अफगानिस्तानमा यस्तो भयो, न्युज हेर भन्यो.
The attack was the latest in a recent surge of violence that highlights the challenges faced by the Afghan government in Kabul and its western backers as Washington slowly draws down its remaining troops despite a persistent insurgency. At least 8,000 Nepali nationals are working in Afghanistan, according to the Labour Department, but actual numbers could be higher as many cross over to India, which shares an open border with Nepal, and then travel onto Afghanistan.
A large number of refugees from Afghanistan have been taking shelter in neighboring Pakistan. The refugees are often subjected to harassment by the Pakistani security forces. The United Nations new refugee chief has urged Pakistanis not to blame Afghan refugees for terrorism in the country. Have a look.
The United Nations refugee chief Filipino Grandi urged Pakistanis not to blame Afghan refugees for terrorism in their country amid growing public calls for the deportation and worsening relations between the two countries. Grandi was speaking during a visit to a repatriation center outside the northwestern Pakistan city of Peshawar.
Please don't categorize all refugees as terrorists, because there have been very serious, despicable, horrifying episodes of terrorism, including here in Peshawar, as we all know. My appeal is that not only to the authorities but also to the local population. Refugees, as you know, are not terrorists. And if a few of them have been involved in criminal acts, then they should be prosecuted through due process, but according to law, like any other person.
Saying the 2.5 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan risks becoming a forgotten crisis, Grandi called on the international community to invest more funds to help them.
Evidently, the numbers have declined. And with the numbers have declined also the resources that the international community has made available to Afghan refugees through UNHCR and through its partners. And more importantly, the attention that the world is paying to this important displacement group of displaced people, of refugee people.
Pakistani officials have recently hinted at deporting Afghan refugees amid tense relations with Kabul. A decision to renew their legal status by June 30th deadline has not yet been announced, though past deadlines have resulted in last-minute extensions. The number of Afghans voluntarily returning home is down sharply this year, as violence soars in Afghanistan, where the government and its US allies continue to fight a rejuvenated Taliban insurgency. So far, about 6,000 Afghans have voluntarily chosen to return home from Pakistan this year, compared to 58,211 voluntary repatriations last year, according to the UNHCR. Many Afghan refugees say they feel pressured by increased harassment by the authorities that they link to worsening diplomatic relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan. A recent border spat between the two at the nearby Torkham crossing left 4 dead and thousands stranded. Pakistan has the second largest refugee population in the world, with more than 1.5 million registered and about a million unregistered refugees from Afghanistan, most of whom fled the Soviet invasion in 1979.
Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani in Tashkent on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) summit. She said China will join the international aid to the rebuilding of Afghanistan and support its peaceful process, which should be pushed forward inclusively, led by Afghan people and owned by Afghan people. He said China will proactively participate in international aid for Afghanistan and support the SCO to play its role in Afghan issues. The two sides should work together to enhance cooperation in the areas of agriculture, energy, infrastructure, and the exploration of human resources, adding that cooperation in anti-terrorism and security should be enhanced. Afghans living in the Chamane-Babra camp on the outskirts of Kabul have been hit by another crisis in the shelter set up after being displaced due to unrest and political instability in the country. Here's a report.
For more than a decade, the camp's residents have been living on the edge in squalid conditions without protection from harsh weather conditions. The security has now deteriorated in the settlement, which houses more than 700 displaced families and has become a reason of concern for its inhabitants. Despite living in squalor defined by wrecked tent houses, mud houses, open sewers and dirt roads, people here have only simplest of wishes.
نام من حمیده است. من آرزو دارم که طفلکم جور شود. مریض است دیگه هیچ آرزویی هم ندارم.
The camp manager Raz Mohammed said returning refugees had built the camp by themselves in 2002, and now it is home to approximately 3,500 former refugees who returned mostly from Pakistan and Iran, the two main countries for where Afghan refugees had sought asylum. In addition to homelessness and unemployment, the camp's residents now have to suffer from unstable security. Complaints and anger prevail in the camp as a result of unfulfilled promises made by the Afghan government and international organizations for providing them help. The aid that once flowed to Kabul's displaced populations has dried up in the last 2 years.
این آمریکایی آمد کشور کرزی آمد اعلام کرد که برای هر کسی در وطن خود در جای خود به وطن امنیت شده است، شهر آرامی شده است. هر کشور 40 کشور در این وطن ما آمده است، کمک بر میکنه، معاونت بر میکنه. خیسیم بیاد خم بیاد بیا وطن ماست، خاک ماست. کس از ما پرسان نکرد، کس از ما تحقیق نکرد، کس برای کمک به امرای ما نکرد، بیاد هیچ به از ما کس نخورد.
According to an official report, more than 1.2 million Afghans are now displaced, a two-fold increase in 3 years. Afghans also form one of the world's largest refugee populations, with an estimate 2.6 million living beyond the country's border.
A large number of residents are forced to migrate from Afghanistan due to insecurity and political instability. On the occasion of World Refugee Day, an Afghan migrant in New Delhi narrates her journey from the war-torn country to the Indian capital. We have a report.
A function to mark the World Refugee Day was recently organized by United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR agency, in collaboration with Tehri University in New Delhi. The event brought together refugees from countries like Afghanistan, Myanmar, and Eritrea who were forced to flee their motherland due to various reasons. An Afghan refugee who now teaches yoga in New Delhi, Salma, shared her story with us.
and I learned 15 women stitching and improve their skills. And I teach them how they design clothes traditional design with modern clothes. In 2011, I decided to make a fashion show and concert with my group of friends and Young Women for Change. We organized a concert with a fashion show. I found it very difficult, young girls, to wear clothes and catwalk in front of media.
As per UNHCR, there are 21.3 million refugees worldwide. Nearly 40.8 million people have been forced to flee their homes but are within the confines of their own countries.
So 20th of June, United Nations celebrates World Refugee Day. It's a day when we celebrate the courage, resilience of refugees like those who were forced to leave their countries. So that's why we have organized a panel discussion today to create empathy about refugees who are in India.
As per United Nations Human Commissioner for Refugee Agency, around 14,000 Afghan refugees are residing in New Delhi.
With that, we come to the end of this week's episode of Afghanistan Report. I'm Swati Kundra taking your leave. We'll be back next week with more news and views from Afghanistan. Goodbye and Khuda Hafiz.